In a silver mine, a man and a woman were caught being loved, and a man standing at a distance saw them. Because of his complaint, both were taken to court. When the judge was about to sentence the man, he began telling the whole story of what had happened to him from the very beginning in detail. One day, a beautiful girl named Eddie was standing on a dangerous deserted road waiting for someone. Just then, a truck passed by. Eddie waved her hand to signal the driver to stop. The truck driver pulled over and let her in. The driver was a lustful man. As Eddie sat inside, he kept staring at her. When just staring didn't satisfy him, he began touching her. Eddie sensed his intentions were not good and understood exactly what he wanted. Then, Eddie played along to lure him in. She removed the truck driver's shoes and threw them away, then took off his clothes so that he wouldn't be able to chase her outside. The truck driver never expected Eddie to do something like this. She quickly grabbed her bag, got out, and ran away. The poor truck driver tried to chase her, but since he had no clothes on, he stayed near the truck and yelled at her. Eddie kept running until she reached a hillside, from where she spotted a house down in the valley. She thought maybe someone would be there and decided to go check. When she arrived, she noticed the house's owner was nowhere to be seen. Without permission, she couldn't just walk in, so she sat outside to wait. After some time, she saw an old car approaching the house and figured it must be the owner. When the car stopped, a man stepped out. His name was Jess, and he was the owner. Jess was a factory worker whose wife had left him 15 years earlier, taking their 2 daughters with her. Jess was surprised to see Eddie sitting in front of his house. He asked who she was and why she was there. Eddie replied that she was homeless and needed a place to stay. Jess told her that he lived alone and that she could stay, but Eddie quickly began flirting with him, which angered Jess, and he told her to leave. Disheartened, Eddie started walking away. After she left, Jess went to milk his cow, but the next moment he noticed Eddie hadn't actually gone anywhere. Instead, she had followed him and was trying to talk to him. Jess felt pity for Eddie because she hadn't eaten in days, so he gave her some milk to drink. After drinking the milk, Eddie stood in front of the house, then told Jess her name, but without asking for permission, she went inside Jess's house to get her bag. Jess was just left staring at her in surprise. Still, he couldn't throw this girl out of his home because Jess was a kind man. That night, Jess and Eddie sat down to have dinner. Afterward, Jess began asking about her mother, and then asked her to tell him about herself. Eddie began explaining that her mother would dig ponds for people in exchange for money. She also said that back in school, she had fallen in love with a boy and became pregnant. She gave birth to a baby who was now 2 months old. Because of this, the people around her home started taunting her, so she left her house in frustration. When Jess learned the truth, he realized she wasn't a good girl. He told her to leave his home, but Eddie pleaded with him to let her stay for the night and promised she would leave in the morning. Jess agreed to her request. After dinner, Jess showed her to her room, wished her good night, and went to bed. Later that night, when Eddie was in her room undressing to sleep, Jess saw her shadow on the curtain and felt a quiet sense of pleasure. Eddie seemed to be sinking into his thoughts, and for the first time in years, Jess felt like he had someone to ease his loneliness. But Jess still didn't know what Eddie really thought about him. The next morning, Eddie woke up and found Jess gone. She assumed he must have gone to his factory, so she headed there herself. When she arrived, Jess ran toward her asking why she had come. Eddie said she just wanted to see his factory. Then she asked, "So this is a silver extracting factory. Why don't you take some silver from here and become rich?" Jess explained that the factory used to produce a lot of silver, but over time, production slowed down. Now he was only in charge of maintenance, and he could never steal from the place. Eddie then said, "But isn't there still enough silver here for us to live comfortably?" Jess told her, "You shouldn't think like that. Bad things always happen to those who think wrongly." Eddie replied, "Doing something wrong is how I got a son, and that son is the child of the owner of this silver factory, Galaxy." She revealed that Galaxy had gotten her pregnant but refused to marry her. Now, for the sake of her son, Eddie had decided she must take control of this factory. Thought for a couple of seconds, Jess, unhappy with her behavior, grabbed her hand and took her to a church. Once there, in front of the priest, Jess told her whole story out loud for everyone to hear. Eddie felt terrible when she heard it and tried to run out of the church. Jess chased after her to stop her. He tried to stop Eddie, but she left angrily. Jess didn't know what to do. After that, Jess drove his old car home. At home, he saw Eddie wasn't there and wondered where she could have gone. Saddened, he sat down and waited, believing Eddie would come back to him. Hours Hours passed with no sign of her. Then Jess noticed a car a little distance from his house and saw Eddie getting out of it. He watched her as she slowly came toward his house. Jess went up to her and asked whose car it was and who the man in the car had been. Jess was falling in love with Eddie and didn't want her around other men. Eddie replied that it was her friend's brother who had dropped her off. Jess fell silent after hearing that. That night, when Jess and Eddie were alone together in a room, Jess asked her about what had happened at the church and why she had run away. Eddie was still upset about the church incident and wouldn't talk. Jess understood she was still angry and might leave, so he tried to comfort her, saying she could stay as long as she wanted and promising he wouldn't say anything like that again. Jess also told Eddie that starting the next day he would go back to working to extract silver. Hearing that, Eddie brightened and hugged him. Seeing Eddie hug him made Jess uneasy, so he pulled away. The next day, they both went to the mine to dig for silver. After many hours of hard work, they found nothing and returned home exhausted. Eddie, worn out from the mine work, lay down at home. Jess told her he had heated water and she should come bathe. He was taking care of her now. Eddie took off her clothes to bathe and sat in the tub, asking Jess to give her a little massage to relieve her tiredness. Jess had also grown attached to Eddie, so he began to massage her. As he started to move closer, he stopped himself, and Eddie immediately said she liked him being near her. Jess said he couldn't call it love yet because he didn't know her well enough. The next day, while they were digging at the mine, they found a lot of silver. Both of them were thrilled. A man standing above the mine was watching and listening to them. After taking the silver, Eddie and Jess went to town to sell it. At one point, Eddie told Jess to stop the car and said she was going shopping nearby. When Jess returned after selling the silver, Eddie wasn't there. The shopkeeper told him Eddie had gone straight to a pub. When Jess went to the pub, he saw Eddie dancing with a man. He sat there and watched her, but after a long time of dancing, Jess grabbed her hand and tried to take her home. Eddie refused and said she would go with that man. Right in front of Jess, Eddie was talking about going away with another man. Jess didn't like it at all, so he told her, "I'm ready to do anything, now let's go home." Eddie agreed to Jess's request and they both headed toward the house. But on the way, inside a pub, some thugs started beating Jess. Seeing this, Eddie jumped in to defend him. Because of this fight, they had to go to court. In fact, the police had also gotten involved in their fight. For the offense of fighting, they were fined, and after paying the penalty, they set off toward home again. On the way, the two of them were having fun as they walked home. At the house, Eddie's older sister Jamie had arrived. When Eddie reached home, Jamie hugged her. Jess noticed that Jamie had a little girl with her who turned out to be Eddie's daughter. Eddie came to Jess and told him that the girl was her daughter, but Jess didn't say anything. He just went inside the house. That night, Jess was playing affectionately with Eddie's daughter when he noticed a mark on her stomach. Meanwhile, Jamie told Eddie that her boss wanted to marry her and was coming to take her. The next day, when the boss arrived to take Eddie, she refused to marry him, saying, "Why are you here? I don't want to marry you. Just go away." But the boss, who had loved Eddie for a long time, persuaded her by swearing on his love for her. After that, the two went to Jess to ask for his permission before leaving. The boss apologized to Jess and asked to take Eddie with him. Jess forgave him. That night, the boss announced to everyone that he and Eddie would get married within 2 days. Meanwhile, Jess saw his wife, Morgan, arriving near his house with her husband, Monk, and their friend Ed. Jess picked up his gun. Monk tried to calm him down, and when Jess saw Morgan, he lowered the gun. They had actually come to meet Eddie because Morgan had been ill and wanted to see Eddie one last time. After that, they grabbed Morgan and took her inside the house. Everyone stayed at Jess's house that night. Monk came to meet Jess, but Morgan attacked Monk with a needle. Luckily, Monk saved himself and tried to restrain her. In the struggle, Morgan was killed. The next day, everyone attended Morgan's funeral, but Monk was nowhere to be seen. Jess realized that Monk might know about the silver mine. To protect his factory, Jess grabbed his gun and ran toward it. When he got there, he saw Monk digging up the silver mine. That's when Jess noticed a mark on Monk's stomach, exactly the same as the one on Eddie's child's stomach. After seeing this, Jess realized the child wasn't the boss's, it was Monk's. Jess was furious with Monk because Monk had abused his wife and daughter, so Jess shot him and Monk died on the spot. Jess threw the body into the mine. After that, Jess went to the boss and told him the child Eddie had wasn't his but Monk's. The mark on the child's belly matched Monk's. In truth, Jess also wanted Eddie for himself, so he'd come to drive the boss away from her. The next day, Eddie and the boss were supposed to get married. Eddie, dressed as a bride, waited in front of the house for the boss, but he never showed up. That night, when Jess and Eddie were together, Jess tried to make love to her. At that moment, he told Eddie that starting the next day, they would both go to work in the mine. Hearing this, Eddie was very happy. The next day, on their way to the mine, Eddie pretended to fall. When Jess bent down to help her up, Eddie pulled him onto her, and the two of them gave themselves over to love. They made love again in the mine. The following day, while they were extracting silver from the mine, the police arrived and arrested them both. Jess asked the policeman what his crime was. The officer said Jess had made love with him, but he had no proof. They were brought to court, and Eddie's boss testified that he had seen Eddie and Jess together intimately. After hearing that, the judge became angry and was about to sentence them both. Jess then spoke up, saying that Eddie was not his but Monk's, that the scar on Eddie's belly matched Monk's. This proved Eddie was Monk's child, not Jess's. They were released. The boss took Eddie away to another city, and poor Jess could only watch them go. The story ends.